the building that ages faster inside. At the far edge of the city, beyond the last streetlight and the final stretch of broken pavement, stands a building that time seems to have forgotten. Its windows are clouded with dust and grime. Paint peels from the walls like shedding skin. Rust eats away at the iron doors, leaving behind the quiet smell of decay and rain-soaked concrete. No signs warn people to stay away. No fences block the entrance. The structure simply waits, silent, open, and strangely inviting. Most people pass it without a second glance. It looks like just another abandoned place, another forgotten corner swallowed by neglect. But those who step inside rarely leave unchanged. The stories began as whispers. A man who entered for what he believed was an hour came back looking exhausted, his hair streaked with gray. A woman who explored the upper floors returned with trembling hands and deep lines etched into her face as if several years had quietly settled onto her skin. Doctors could find no illness, no poisoning, no exposure that could explain the sudden aging. Their bodies told a story their memories could barely understand. Even more unsettling was the footage. Security cameras mounted across the street recorded every entrance and exit. The timestamp showed nothing unusual. People went in, people came out. Sometimes less than 60 minutes had passed. No missing frames, no distortions, no electrical interference. From the perspective of the outside world, time moved forward exactly as it always had. But inside the building, clocks told a different story. Wristwatches stopped, restarted, or jumped forward without reason. Phone batteries drained in minutes, then mysteriously recovered. Some recordings captured long stretches of silence where footsteps echoed endlessly through empty corridors, as if the space itself had stretched wider than its walls should allow. Those who entered described an oppressive stillness, like standing underwater while the world continued moving above the surface. Breathing felt heavier. Thoughts slowed, then raced. Mirrors reflected faces that looked subtly wrong, older, tired, unfamiliar. Yet the moment they stepped back outside, the city resumed its normal rhythm, unaware that anything had changed. It wasn't that time moved faster inside the building. Something far more disturbing seemed to be happening. Time wasn't accelerating, it was dividing. And anyone who crossed that threshold risked slipping into a layer of reality where the clock no longer obeyed the rules of the world they left behind. Chapter 1. The First Incident. The first recorded incident didn't make headlines. There were no breaking news alerts, no viral footage, no immediate panic. It began quietly, buried in an online forum where urban explorers shared forgotten locations and abandoned architecture. Among photos of collapsed stairwells and graffiti-covered hallways, one post stood out. A young explorer using the alias Mark Hale claimed he had experienced a severe time distortion inside an abandoned commercial building on the outskirts of the city. He uploaded a short clip from his body camera, showing himself entering the building at mid-morning and exiting less than an hour later. The timestamp appeared normal. The footage showed no visible glitches, no skipped frames, no strange lighting effects. What disturbed viewers wasn't the video itself, it was Mark. In the entry footage, he appeared healthy and energetic, joking softly into the camera as he adjusted his backpack straps. His skin was smooth, his movements quick, his voice steady. But when the camera captured him leaving the building, the difference was undeniable. His shoulders drooped. His breathing sounded shallow and uneven. Faint lines had formed around his eyes and mouth, and his hairline looked subtly thinner. He paused for several seconds at the doorway, gripping the frame as if steadying himself. At first, many assumed it was a hoax. Lighting tricks, makeup, clever editing, online attention-seeking behavior. Mark himself dismissed the initial reactions with nervous humor, insisting he hadn't altered the footage. He claimed he felt wrong, as if he had been awake for days without sleep, even though the outside clock showed less than an hour had passed. Concern grew when Mark agreed to undergo medical evaluation. Doctors documented elevated biological markers consistent with accelerated aging. His skin elasticity had decreased. Minor joint degeneration appeared in his knees and wrists. Telomere measurements suggested cellular wear normally associated with several additional years of life. None of it aligned with natural aging or known environmental exposure. Blood tests revealed no toxins, no radiation damage, no chemical imbalance. When asked what he experienced inside the building, Mark struggled to describe it. He said the air felt thick, as if every breath required effort. Sound behaved strangely. Footsteps echoed too long, like the hallways stretched farther than they should have. His phone lost signal immediately. The flashlight on his camera dimmed without warning, then suddenly brightened again. At one point, he believed he had been walking for hours, moving through identical corridors that never seemed to end. His body camera supported part of his story. The internal footage showed Mark walking through empty office spaces, dust floating in narrow beams of light. His breathing gradually became heavier. He stopped several times to rest, checking his watch in visible confusion. At one moment, he whispered, "This doesn't make sense. I've been here way too long." According to the camera's internal clock, more than 8 hours had passed. Yet the external security camera timestamp showed only 57 minutes between his entry and exit. Investigators synchronized the two time sources. No malfunction could explain the discrepancy. Both devices were functioning normally before and after the event. The contradiction became the core mystery. If Mark had truly spent 8 hours inside, his physical exhaustion made sense. But how could the outside world register less than 1 hour? And more disturbing, why had his body aged as if that time had genuinely passed? Mark reported lingering effects in the days that followed. His sleep patterns became irregular. He experienced vivid dreams of endless hallways and distant footsteps echoing behind him. His hands sometimes trembled without warning. Most unsettling, he described a persistent feeling that his internal sense of time was no longer reliable, as if his body clock had been permanently shifted. The online community quickly took notice. Skeptics attempted to debunk the footage frame by frame. Engineers analyzed the metadata. Medical professionals weighed in on the biological markers. No definitive explanation emerged. While some accused Mark of fabricating evidence, others began visiting the building themselves, cautiously, briefly, documenting every second. None experienced changes as severe as Mark's, but several reported mild disorientation, watches running slow or fast by several minutes, a strange pressure in the ears, a sensation of time stretching during short visits. Enough anomalies accumulated to raise concern among local authorities. Access to the building was quietly restricted. Warning tape appeared overnight. Surveillance cameras were installed across the street. Official statements labeled the structure unsafe due to structural instability, though no visible repairs or inspections followed. The building was not demolished. It was simply watched. Mark never returned. He refused all interview requests after his final statement. Whatever happened in there didn't feel like time moving faster. It felt like I stepped somewhere I wasn't supposed to exist. That single incident transformed an abandoned structure into a quiet anomaly, one that would soon attract researchers, skeptics, and those willing to test the boundaries of reality itself. Chapter 2: Repeated Experiments. Once the first incident could no longer be dismissed as coincidence or fabrication, a small group of independent researchers began paying closer attention to the building. They were not part of any official institution at first. Physicists between contracts, biomedical analysts, engineers with private funding, and data specialists drawn together by the same unanswered question: how could a human body show signs of aging that the outside world insisted had not occurred? Their earliest goal was simple: measure time itself. Two identical atomic-grade clocks were synchronized down to the microsecond. One was mounted on a reinforced tripod just outside the building's main entrance, directly visible to the exterior surveillance camera. The second was carried inside by a remote-controlled wheeled drone equipped with high-resolution video, checked environmental sensors, and redundant power systems. No humans entered during the first phase. The drone crossed the threshold at precisely 0914. For the first 20 minutes, the internal feed appeared normal: dust-covered hallways, collapsed ceiling tiles, graffiti fading into peeling paint. The clock on the drone remained perfectly aligned with the exterior clock. Then, Without warning, the synchronization drifted. At first, the discrepancy measured only milliseconds, within acceptable error margins. But within seconds, the gap widened into full seconds. The drone's clock began advancing faster than the exterior reference. By the time the drone reached the central stairwell, its internal clock was nearly 3 minutes ahead. No electromagnetic interference was detected. Signal strength remained stable. Battery levels showed no anomalies, yet the time gap continued expanding. After 40 minutes of external time, the drone's clock indicated nearly 3 hours had passed. The research team recalled the drone immediately. When it crossed back outside, the clocks began resynchronizing automatically, slowly drifting back into alignment as if correcting a temporary distortion. The drone system showed increased internal heat stress consistent with extended operational duration, despite the short external mission time. The data suggested a disturbing possibility. Time inside the building was not uniform. Encouraged and unsettled, the researchers escalated the tests. Environmental sensors were placed throughout the ground floor. Temperature probes, barometric sensors, radiation counters, magnetic field detectors, and acoustic monitors. Nothing registered outside normal variation. No spikes. No anomalies that could explain the temporal drift. Next came biological testing. Small lab animals were placed inside protective enclosures and carried into the building for controlled durations, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes. Their heart rates increased sharply while inside. Upon removal, several displayed elevated stress hormones and minor cellular fatigue markers inconsistent with their exposure duration. One specimen showed early tissue degradation normally associated with weeks of metabolic strain. Again, no toxins, no radiation damage, no oxygen deprivation. Time itself seemed to be the variable. Human volunteers followed, cautiously under medical supervision. Each participant wore multiple synchronized devices, wristwatches, biometric trackers, body cameras, internal temperature sensors, and independent GPS clocks. Entry durations were strictly limited to under 15 minutes of external time. Subject 1 reported mild dizziness and a sensation of pressure in the ears. His internal timer indicated nearly 35 minutes had passed during a 12-minute visit. Subject 2 experienced auditory distortion, footsteps echoing longer than expected, distant humming sounds without a source. Her internal devices showed a drift of nearly 3 times normal time flow. Subject 3 reported something stranger. He claimed that certain areas of the building felt thicker, as if movement required more effort. In one narrow hallway, he experienced sudden fatigue, blurred vision, and a powerful sense of disorientation. His internal clock jumped forward nearly 90 minutes in less than 8 minutes of external time. Mapping the building revealed inconsistent temporal zones. Some rooms exhibited minimal distortion. Others showed dramatic acceleration. The shifts were not stable. Zones seemed to migrate slowly, like invisible currents flowing through the structure. Volunteers also reported visual anomalies. Reflections appeared subtly delayed or mismatched in mirrors and glass surfaces. Shadows lagged behind movement by fractions of a second. Peripheral vision occasionally revealed motion that disappeared when directly observed. Psychological effects increased with repeated exposure. Participants described fragmented memories, mild depersonalization, and distorted time perception even hours after leaving the building. Several reported vivid dreams involving endless corridors, overlapping rooms, and echoes of their own voices speaking out of sequence. One volunteer refused to continue after stating, "It feels like the building doesn't just change time, it rearranges it." Despite increasing evidence, one crucial mystery remained unsolved. If time accelerated inside, why did external cameras show nothing abnormal? High-speed cameras were installed outside, recording at thousands of frames per second. Infrared imaging, motion detection grids, and laser range scanners monitored every entry and exit. No frame drops, no motion blur, no temporal artifacts. From the outside perspective, every person entered and exited smoothly and continuously, as if nothing unusual occurred at all. Inside, however, subjective and biological time diverged dramatically. This contradiction forced the research team to reconsider their assumptions. Time was not behaving like a simple speed differential, not faster or slower in a measurable flow. Instead, it behaved like layered systems operating simultaneously. One physicist proposed a controversial model. The building occupied a region where multiple temporal reference frames overlapped imperfectly. When a person crossed the threshold, their biological processes partially coupled to a neighboring temporal layer, one that progressed at a different rate and possibly along a slightly divergent timeline. The body aged according to that layer. The outside world did not. Reintegration upon exit caused clocks to resynchronize, but biological changes remained irreversible. Another researcher suggested that consciousness itself might anchor differently than physical matter, explaining reports of memory distortion and delayed perception. No theory could fully explain all observed effects, but one conclusion became increasingly clear. The building was not accelerating time, it was separating it. As experiments continued, small inconsistencies began appearing in the data. Missing sensor logs, slight timestamp overlaps that could not be reconciled, audio recordings capturing faint overlapping voices that no participant remembered speaking. The building was not just passively distorting time, it seemed to be interacting with it. The researchers recommended suspending further human testing. The risks were no longer theoretical. Whatever existed inside the building was operating under rules that human biology was never meant to follow, and the deeper they measured it, the less predictable it became. Chapter 3: The Paradox. The data refused to settle into any stable pattern. Every new measurement seemed to contradict the last. Time drifted differently depending on location, duration of exposure, biological state of the subject, and even unexplained environmental variables that could not be isolated or controlled. What began as a scientific investigation gradually turned into a philosophical confrontation with the nature of time itself. The core paradox was simple to describe, yet impossible to resolve. Inside the building, biological systems aged as if hours, days, or even years had passed. Cellular decay followed measurable trajectories, metabolic byproducts accumulated, neural fatigue mirrored extended wakefulness. The body clearly experienced real-time progression. Outside the building, clocks showed only minutes had passed. If time inside truly accelerated, then external cameras should capture irregular motion, blurred exits, compressed movement, frame inconsistencies. None appeared. If time merely distorted perception, then biological aging should not occur. Yet it did. Both realities existed simultaneously. Neither fully explained the other. Physicists debated whether local space-time curvature could be responsible. Under extreme gravitational fields, time dilation occurs, but such forces would require massive energy signatures that simply did not exist inside the building. No gravitational anomalies were detected. No measurable space-time warping registered on any instrument. Others suggested quantum decoherence zones, regions where overlapping quantum states might interfere with macroscopic systems. But such effects had never been observed at architectural scale, nor with stable repeatability. The building behaved like a sealed pocket where the rules governing temporal continuity no longer applied uniformly. One of the more unsettling theories proposed that the building did not alter time, it altered synchronization. In normal reality, every system, atomic clocks, biological processes, electronic oscillators, human perception, remains tightly synchronized to a shared temporal framework. Inside the building, that synchronization fractured. Different systems aligned themselves to different reference layers of time. The human body, driven by chemical reactions and biological rhythms, appeared to couple with a faster temporal layer. External cameras and stationary electronics remained anchored to the baseline timeline. Conscious awareness fluctuated unpredictably between the two, explaining reports of memory distortion and perceptual lag. In essence, people inside were living in two times at once. But this explanation raised deeper problems. If multiple temporal layers coexisted in the same physical space, how were they separated? Why did the boundary appear stable at the building's threshold? Why did clocks resynchronize upon exit, yet biological aging remained permanent? Some researchers suggested that time itself might not be a continuous flow, but a stack of parallel progressions, like overlapping transparencies, normally aligned so perfectly that separation never becomes noticeable. The building, by unknown means, slightly misaligned these layers. Not enough to fracture reality outright, just enough to let things slip. Memory anomalies added further complexity. Several participants reported recalling conversations that never occurred. Others experienced fragmented timelines in their dreams, events replaying out of sequence or overlapping with alternate versions of themselves. One volunteer insisted he remembered leaving the building twice, each exit slightly different, though cameras showed only one departure. These accounts could not be verified, but they were disturbingly consistent. If consciousness itself partially detached from baseline time, then subjective experience might briefly access neighboring temporal states, echoes of possible timelines that normally remain inaccessible. This implied that the building might not only separate time, it might expose branching realities. The ethical implications became alarming. If a human could unknowingly cross into another temporal layer, even briefly, what constituted identity? Was the person who returned truly the same individual who entered, or a near-identical version drawn from a neighboring timeline? Biological aging was irreversible evidence that something fundamental had changed, yet memory continuity masked the transformation. From the outside world, nothing appeared broken, but internally, something had shifted permanently. The paradox deepened when researchers examined sensor anomalies from extended tests. Audio recordings occasionally captured faint overlapping speech patterns, echoes of voices that matched volunteer vocal profiles but were speaking different words than recorded transcripts. Thermal sensors briefly registered human heat signatures in empty rooms seconds after volunteers had already exited those spaces. Not long enough to be conclusive, long enough to be disturbing. It was as if residual traces of alternative temporal states lingered momentarily before collapsing back into baseline reality. The building behaved less like a malfunctioning structure and more like a thin boundary between overlapping temporal dimensions. Not a gateway, but a fault line. The closer researchers pushed their measurements, the more unstable the data became. Statistical noise increased. Sensor reliability declined without hardware explanation. Correlations weakened unpredictably. The system resisted being fully mapped. One senior analyst quietly summarized the situation in a closed meeting. We're trying to measure something that doesn't want to stay in one timeline long enough to be measured. At this stage, the investigation faced a difficult truth. The paradox could not be solved with existing models of physics, biology, or neuroscience. The phenomenon operated outside established frameworks. Continued experimentation risked irreversible biological harm and potentially unknown temporal consequences. The building was not simply dangerous, it was ontologically unstable, a place where reality itself loosened its grip on consistency. And the more humanity tried to understand it, the more it revealed how fragile our assumptions about time truly were. Chapter 4: The Closure. The decision to shut down the investigation did not come with an announcement. There was no press conference, no public warning, no explanation offered to the city. One morning, the warning tape surrounding the building was replaced by solid steel fencing. Surveillance cameras multiplied overnight, mounted on nearby rooftops and light poles, quietly feeding data into secured networks. Unmarked vehicles appeared intermittently, staying only long enough to recalibrate equipment before disappearing again. Official records labeled the site as structurally unstable and environmentally unsafe. No further details were provided. Research access was revoked without negotiation. Data archives were classified or quietly confiscated. Independent teams were instructed to cease publication and surrender all raw sensor logs. Some complied willingly, others resisted, briefly. Within weeks, the building disappeared from public discourse. Online forum threads were deleted. Mirror sites vanished. Archived footage became corrupted or inaccessible. Even cached copies faded into digital silence, leaving behind only fragments and secondhand recollections. To the outside world, the anomaly had never existed. But for those who had entered the building, even briefly, the effects remained. Several volunteers continued experiencing disrupted sleep cycles and irregular perception of time. Moments felt elongated or compressed without warning. Some developed heightened sensitivity to repetitive sounds. claiming echoes lingered longer than they should. A few reported difficulty emotionally connecting to memories formed before their exposure, as if parts of their past belonged to a slightly different version of themselves. Medical follow-ups documented subtle but persistent biological deviations. Minor cellular aging markers remained elevated. Neurological scans showed altered circadian regulation in several subjects. Nothing severe enough to justify alarm, but enough to confirm irreversible change. Mark Hale never gave another interview. He relocated quietly and severed contact with most of the research community. In his final private correspondence, later leaked anonymously, he wrote only one sentence: "I feel like I came back out of order." The building itself remained untouched. No demolition crews arrived. No renovation permits were filed. No redevelopment plans surfaced. It simply stood behind its fencing, silent and empty, monitored endlessly by cameras that continued to record nothing unusual. Day after day, the footage showed a motionless structure aging normally under sun, rain, and pollution, while whatever had disturbed time inside remained invisible to every external instrument. Occasionally, security logs recorded unexplained sensor resets or timestamp synchronization events. They were dismissed as routine maintenance errors. No human entered again, not officially. Rumors persisted among technicians responsible for maintaining the perimeter systems. Some claim motion alerts triggered briefly inside sealed zones, only to clear themselves seconds later. Others whispered about audio interference, faint echoes captured by internal microphones during empty night hours, resembling distant footsteps or unintelligible murmurs. None of these anomalies were acknowledged. The closure achieved its primary objective: containment through ignorance. If the phenomenon could not be understood, it would be isolated. If it could not be isolated, it would be forgotten. But time does not disappear simply because it is ignored. If the building truly separated temporal layers rather than accelerating them, then its existence implied that reality itself was thinner than humanity had assumed, vulnerable to fractures that could emerge quietly, without warning or visible cause. A structure did not need to explode or collapse to become dangerous. It only needed to bend the rules no one realized were holding the world together. The final internal report, never publicly released, concluded with a recommendation rather than an explanation. No further interaction is advised. Long-term exposure risks cannot be predicted within known physical models. The building remained classified as dormant, not resolved, not cured, not understood, just waiting. Because somewhere inside that sealed structure, time may still be drifting, dividing silently into overlapping layers, indifferent to human caution, curiosity, or control. And if the boundary ever weakens again, there may not be enough warning to stop what crosses through it next. Final line. We like to believe time is stable, that every second moves forward in a clean, predictable line, that the past stays behind us, the future waits ahead, and the present flows evenly for everyone, everywhere. Clocks reinforce that illusion. Calendars organize it. Memories anchor us to the idea that life unfolds in a single direction, shared by all. But the building tells a different story. It suggests that time is not a river, but a layered structure, the fragile and imperfectly aligned. Most of the time, those layers move together so seamlessly that we never notice the separation. Our bodies age in rhythm with the world around us. Our thoughts synchronize with the ticking of machines. Reality feels stable because everything agrees on what now means. Inside that abandoned structure, the agreement breaks. Not violently, not dramatically, but quietly. A person steps across an invisible boundary and unknowingly drifts into a neighboring layer of time. Their body continues forward along a different rhythm while the outside world remains unchanged. When they return, the clocks forgive the distortion, but biology does not. Memory tries to smooth the contradiction, but something always feels slightly misplaced. Time didn't speed up, it separated, and separation leaves traces. Maybe we pass places like this every day without realizing it, small fractures in reality hidden behind ordinary walls and empty rooms. Maybe most of them remain harmless. Maybe some quietly heal themselves. Or maybe a few continue to widen, waiting patiently for the right conditions to expose their instability again. Because if time can divide once, it can divide again. And the next boundary might not announce itself with aging skin or distorted clocks. It might appear in subtler ways, lost moments, misplaced memories, a growing sense that something no longer lines up the way it used to. We may never notice the moment we step across it, but time will.
Shadows